For a decade now, I've hosted an internet party called the Saturday Night Craft Along on Instagram every, obviously, Saturday night. So let's try the YouTube version and actually craft along together. In this video, I am making a page in my Sketchbook Revival journal, which is why I'm kind of on the side because it is a class. So I'm trying to show my process without giving away too much of the content of the class. It was super fun. I actually loved this entire journal. And today I am sharing an episode from my podcast, Ministry of Crafty Shenanigans, talking about classes, learning, fitting in, and the evolution of creativity. And this project is a perfect example of that. Let's craft together. Hi, I'm Rach,
And I'm Car. Welcome to the Ministry of Crafty Shenanigans.
a weekly podcast on creativity, connection, collaboration, and community. Community has been such a huge part of this journey of ours, hasn't it? We've kind of been just wonderfully embraced, especially on Instagram, by our little Mox community. And it's been a really fun part of the process for me to find how we, in this format, fit into the crafting community. Find people who support us and who this project resonates with.
I found it really interesting when we first started this thought process because you already had your Saturday night craft along behind you. And with that came a fair few followers. And when I say fair few, how many have you got now? Thousands?
Almost 6,500.
6,500. Okay, so we've gone with a big blogger, big Instagrammer. I didn't have many followers at all. I think I had like 200 and something. I think you actually did my stats for me on the day we started. And it was crazy because I was like, oh, who wants to listen to me? But actually,
Lots of people, apparently. That's why we do a podcast.
holding onto your coattails has actually like increased my place in the world, which is quite funny because I've never been one to follow anything that sort of goes. So, as you know, Reels, nah. Zoom, no way. I am just one of those people that stick to my own little corner here in the crafty world. But today we're talking about creative tribes and
Yeah.
finding our tribe. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we both come from different backgrounds of, obviously, like with our following. Well, it's not really a different background. That's just a more popular.
It's interesting to me that you say riding on my coattails. That's really sticking out to me because I'm like, I think it was in my Instagram post from this week celebrating our anniversary that I said, literally could not do this without you. And 90% of my projects, most likely. But absolutely, I could not have done this podcast without you. And for me, it's certainly hilarious to hear things like, oh, influencer and riding your coattails because I've never been someone who people gravitate to. I've never been popular. I've always struggled to fit in. This community, though, that has kind of come up around our podcast, the community that I've found on Instagram that's been so warmly embracing of the Saturday Night Craft Along and just general projects, it's a fun experience. Our first quilt camp was where I really first felt that true sense of belonging.
The connection.
So I was 30 and it was such a novel experience to hang out with people who...
Meeting people who are like-minded. Funny story, my daughter actually came to me last week and she goes, oh, how did you meet all your friends? And I'm like, oh, online. My husband joked and he goes, yeah, we used to think that was weird when you met people online back in the day, like in the early days. And we were talking about how we actually met, and it obviously came about with a baby forum.
Yes.
To be honest, it's because of my daughter that I have all these new friends, and I'm now doing a craft account on Instagram and talking to you on a podcast every single week and putting it out there. So we were talking about the ins and the outs of how we actually met. So I was trying to explain the forums to them and how I met you, and it was really interesting. And she turned around and she goes, how did you know they weren't going to like murder you or something?
Are you sure these people are who they say they are? But I think you've hit on a great point there about how connecting the internet can be. I know there's a lot of rhetoric around, people being connected to their phones and not talking to the people in front of them. But at the same time, it's been a wonderful tool for connection. You and I have met, obviously. We've created this podcast. We've met all the wonderful people who follow our podcast, which we love hearing from them. So for all the negatives, there's also still so many great positives, and it makes it easier to kind of find those like-minded followers, no matter how niche. As you were saying, you met friends who were going through the similar medical issues to you, plus you met friends with similar hobbies to you. And it's a real leveler, I think, that if you can connect to the internet, you can meet people who relate to you on whatever level. And something that you and I were discussing yesterday was like how in our mum's era, if they wanted to catch up with their bestie, they'd call them on the old landline with the curly
Oh,
cord, and they'd sit down and they would have a chat.
yeah, I do remember. And you know what? My dad used to do it as well.
Yeah, because it was just a thing. Or, you want to catch up with family, so you wait till, Sunday night when the STD rates are cheaper. Whereas for us, it's a bit different. We don't do that phone calls, but instead we use the internet to our advantage, and we can kind of slip that conversation into our everyday via our messages, because then we can chat and respond as our day allows it. So it's probably a similar level of conversation, but in a different way.
Yeah, while it might seem like we're talking all the time, it's not like I don't sit there for a full 2 hours or something and chat constantly. Like it's
That's
usually
it.
a quick, oh, hey, did you see this? Or, oh, check this meme out. Or, hey, it's you. And then I go about and I go and do my thing.
And that's where the internet has just been so good for helping to facilitate those connective moments, I think. So,
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. But it's interesting. We're talking about finding our place, like within creatively.
yeah.
So with Quilt Camp, that helped with that. Interesting. I've been going back over some old journals back in the day. Yes, I've been journaling for a long time and I mention it every week. But it was interesting how, like, everything has evolved since then. And I seem like life seemed so much more. But then I was also really lost in that place. So, you know how you were saying before that you always sort of feel a little bit not not popular or stuff. Like I've never
Yeah.
followed the popular trends. I wasn't like overly popular at school. I'm not an extrovert to put myself out there too much, I think. So I've always kept my circle fairly close. But yeah, finding your place in life seems to be like an ever evolving concept that just keeps going around and round in circles. So by the time you hit 16, you'll start to find yourself. And then you'll find yourself again around about 20 and then again at 24. And it's this ever evolving. And sometimes in life, it's just more in your face, I think, than it actually is, which then comes back to creativity. How many times have we felt like we're constantly trying to find or, keep up with the Joneses or, we're trying to constantly chase the new
Yeah.
tribe. Not
It's such
not that we don't have the tribe, but there's always, something else that's, so if we start a new craft tomorrow, like pottery,
been there, done that.
okay, well, if I wanted to go and start like a pottery class or something and a regular class, I would feel out of it because I'm brand new. I haven't really done it a heck of a lot. It would be then trying to adjust and find your place within,
Yeah.
if it was a continuous class, I mean, not
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a, just going on a one-off class. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I'm trying to get with the evolution is we are constantly always striving to find our
You're always
feet,
going to be the new person. You're always going to be
find that connection.
looking for a new place,
Yep, I
which I
think
think
so.
has nothing to do with contentment, because it's not a restlessness from a lack of contentment with where you are. I think it's more a growth thing. Is that how you would see it?
Yeah.
Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, no, definitely a
Yeah.
growth thing. And it's not about constantly trying to find your place, but it's
Yeah.
that I think, yeah, more of an internal thing of, oh, I've not done that before. Am I going to be okay to do it? Like, because I've often looked at joining classes and stuff, and I live a small area, as do you, and I've looked at joining like quilt classes and stuff like that, and I've always felt not included whenever I've
Yeah.
gone along to any of these things. So I tend to now go back to that circle. I keep my circle close. I'm talking a lot with my hands today. I'm sorry.
No, no, I totally get what you're saying. And it's really interesting to me. Obviously, we do our notes before a podcast, and I've been looking at your stuff about evolving, and I'm like, oh, really? Because I feel really settled now. So, as I said, I was 30 at that first quilt camp. I'm now rapidly approaching 40, so a decade later, and I feel much more settled. I feel like I've found that crafty tribe. I've found my people. We've got you, got our couple of offsiders that encourage us and enable us and cheer us on. We've got our quilt camp group. But what you say is so true. I know when I did my pottery class, it was a bit like that. I was I was really excited to do it, but I was also quite nervous because I'm like, oh, being in a small town, it makes it interesting. You know who different people are and where they kind of fit in the social structure of a small
Hmm.
town. And it's like, oh, would it be, this group of people that would be going, or would it be this group of people that would be going? And where am I going to fit in that? And in the end, it was fine. It was actually none of those groups of people. And none of them were bad. It was just thinking about how do I fit? And I love your idea. It's just that constant, you're always growing. So you're always going to be finding a new way, finding a new place to fit in and new people to connect with. And at the same time, I guess it's also important to look at the people you've already connected with.
That's the thing. It's not replacing who I've
Yeah,
already connected with, and it's enriching. I think enriching those experiences. If you want to
absolutely.
go to a new class, if I want to go and do oil painting and become a oil master, which let's face it, that ain't going to happen. Done that, failed that. I would be going to a class with probably older people because of where I live. There's a lot of an
Yes.
older population that go to these art classes. I'm saying, like, if I wanted to follow a certain thread that I can't get you guys to jump on, which let's face it, you usually follow me on
When does that
everything.
ever happen?
Oh, there has been a few things. There has been a few things recently. You just won't join me. I was like, okay, well, I think it's the nervousness of stepping outside of your boundary and then going and doing a class and then feeling like you don't fit in. So when you put down the notes today of, I don't even know if it was me or you that came up with this topic, finding your place, I take it literally. And I look at it as you know, I look at all angles of the situation. So I have my tribe, I have my creative group, as you said before, and I wouldn't just go, okay, yeah, no, sorry. And it doesn't matter if some of you aren't actually creating at the moment, or if, the tribe is such, it's cemented
Yeah.
in that we can do, like even when we go away, one of the girls loves to read. She always takes books with her. And it's fantastic because you get book ideas and we chat books and then we'll chat craft and then somebody else will be doing something else. And it's just that it's evolved from that crafty meetup where it was just quilting in that very first year to something so much more that it doesn't matter what we bring along to do, we are there just to hang out, and it's more of a girlfriends weekend with craft on the side, unless it's you and me where we're trying to actually do all the crafts in the whole 3 days that we have together.
Do all the things. I think that really speaks to the depth in which we've found our place within that little group. And that group has formed out of a wider group where we very first found our place in quilting and journaling and crafting and blogging right back in the very early days of those groups. And in the way of life over a decade, obviously life changes and evolves for people. When you find your place, those changes don't necessarily mean you have to leave those people behind. We don't necessarily chat to them as much, but there's a couple that I still follow on Facebook, and we still, we'll leave a like every now and then. We don't talk a lot, but we kind of keep up with each other. Or there's people that I've lost contact with, but they made me a doll's quilt. And there's a couple that, they made a doll's quilt, and I still chat to them on Instagram. So
Well, it's that growth through life, isn't it?
yeah,
You just continue through life. Just because you're not on that same level of you're both quilting still, it doesn't mean that you still can't communicate in other areas.
yeah, that's it. And having found that place, you can still it leaves room for that friendship and that connection to change and grow.
That, and you're not actually boxed into just one creativity.
Yeah.
And I know back in the early days there was a lot that were one creativity.
I think that's kind of come to the core of it, doesn't it? Is that your place will embrace what your creativity looks like, whether it is just that tunnel vision for one hobby and that's it, or if for people like us who have never yet met a medium we don't like.
Oils, oil paints.
Oh, see, I don't mind oils. I have a love-hate relationship with oils. And I think that's the importance of finding your place, is finding people who understand what your creativity looks like.
Yeah, and understanding that it doesn't have to be just one.
Or if it is just one, then finding people who appreciate just one. But for us, we've
Exactly.
got our little community of people who are like, shiny, let's do that.
But you can still like have one craft. Like I know one person I know that has one craft and she's followed it through, and I love following her because that is her entire life. And yet she's still accepting of other people who may not just stick to that one lane. So
Yep.
they have, I mean, I take detours through the mountains on creativity. It's like, oh, I will go into my craft room searching for fabric to start a quilt and walk out with wool and clay and 3 art journals. But that's just what I'm like. And this is why I should not be allowed to clean my craft room, because spring cleaning is still happening and I still cannot see my desk.
Yep. It's really interesting how we all interact with creativity and connection in such different ways, and how our creative process informs how we then connect with the wider community. But speaking of finding our place, I would love to know what is finding a place on your craft table this week.
Oh, so I'm working on Under the Sea, the cross stitch, which is a sew along. I don't even know what number we're up to, which installment, but I kind of got to a point where I stalled on it, put it to the side and started working on the planets. But I came back to it and I went, okay, I'm actually going to like chart it out and start the border. Do the border first, which, wow, I never do the border first. I have this real thing about patterns, and anyone who's designing patterns in future, if you start a pattern in the middle, it's annoying. Don't start it in the middle. Start it in the top left so then we can work
No,
down. No?
no, middle. No, I'm absolutely a middle person.
Oh, mate, you and I can't be friends anymore.
Oh man. How
I
do you
was
start from the top
counting.
left to know that it's right? You've actually got to count to do that. Whereas if it's the middle, you just fold the
No, because you
bugger.
count, you grid it out. So then you can get your grid
No.
done and then you're right to go, and then it gives you anchor points.
Hmm.
Yeah, see, you and I can't be friends anymore.
I hate how very wrong you are today.
Yep. But you know what? We can just cancel this tribe. I'm fine with that. I'm looking for a new one. Anyone out
And
there
that
who
is how the
wants.
podcast exploded. It must be the season for cross stitching because I pulled mine out yesterday too.
I was thinking about you last night
Were you?
and I went, oh, this is great. I'm actually doing a cross stitch where no one's beating me. And then I remembered I actually am being beaten on this one. So, but it's not you for a change. So,
Not me
yay.
for a change. That's nice.
But you're doing the gnomes, aren't you?
I am. I am. So I pull it out with 3 months till Christmas to get started. I did have to rejig my plan because the 12 gnomes actually aren't going to fit across a fat quarter. Once again, I spectacularly underestimated the size of these things. So I'm now doing 8 in this particular piece because that's how many will fit across my thing. So I had to do some rejigging yesterday to work out what patterns I was doing where. So spent some time doing that. I'm excited to be back on that. It's a great school table craft one, that one. So I'm doing that plus my knitting, still going with my shawl.
You haven't shown me that one for a while.
It's all in the repeats. I will show it. I will send you a photo and I will be sure to pop a photo up in our stories. So we will share those projects in our stories as this episode drops so you guys can see what we're up to. We would also love to see what you're up to. And we would also love to know your thoughts on finding your creative tribe. Have you found one? We would love to hear about it. You can join the conversation on our Instagram at Ministry of Crafty Shenanigans, and you can find the links and all the show notes from today's episode at our website, ministryofcraftyshenanigans.com.